Hello folks, it's Madison and welcome back to my deceased channel where I don't post for like a year and then I come back for the Halloween season. This video is another Halloween card. It's August and I am so excited for Halloween, so obviously the best way to channel that energy is by making Halloween cards early. So this card is featuring mostly products from Hello Bluebird because I love their designs. I am using their spooky scene die from Hello Bluebird for the main background of my card here. So I'm cutting out the big spooky scene die, and everything I'm cutting out that is out of this white paper is Canson Bristol Vellum paper. It's 96 pounds. The paper is really smooth and takes really well to the Oxide inks, so it's just a really nice blend, I find, and that is why I chose this paper for this project in particular. I'm also cutting out these little gravestones from the spooky scene die. I'm also using Hello Bluebird's Jack die for these little pumpkins here because I wanted some pumpkins. It's Halloween, they're so stinking cute, I had to use them. And I'm also using this ghostly night die. So the ghosts I did not cut out of the same Bristol paper, I cut them out of this Pearlescent Vellum from Fawn because they're ghosts, they're kind of see-through. They're sparkly. I just thought it was really cute. So I am cutting out all these elements using my die cutting machine and setting them off to the side. So the majority of my card here is all ink blending. So be prepared to watch a lot of ink blending for this card. So I started off with these two little spooky framing trees that were cut out in the scene die. So I'm taking those and I am just ink blending them with some Walnut Stain Distress Oxide ink and this little brush here. I like the brush, it's able to pack on a lot of color, and because of the Bristol smooth cardstock it doesn't look patchy like these brushes tend to kind of blend. I don't prefer them, but for this project they did turn out quite nice. So I am also using this little post-it note here to kind of hide fingerprints so I don't leave fingerprints all over my trees as the ink dries. So once I get them with this flat wash of walnut stain, I thought my trees looked A, not that spooky, and B, they just looked too clean and too flat. So I wanted to add some black soot to just spookify them, make them ready for the Halloween scene, and add some dimension. So I'm going back and forth between the black soot and the walnut stain to blend it out evenly, but just to add some dinge to my trees. And here I am ink blending on my little ground piece that I had cut out with the spooky scene die. You could really do your ground in any color, I think, for this kind of card. I think a green would look great, or a brown even, but I didn't want to do brown because I didn't want it to blend in with the trees, so I just went in with this simple black. The ground isn't the focal point here, so I went very simple with this. I added black soot to the bottom, and I tried to add hickory smoke around here near the top. I think my ink pad is a little dry because the gray didn't really transfer that well, but the majority of it is black soot. And then I put that off to dry, and then here I am focusing on the night sky and then like the little corner pieces that this cuts out. So I'm going to be ink blending all of these. So I am starting off in the center of the biggest sky piece, I guess, with this Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just getting a good circle in the middle just for some omniscient glow in the sky, I guess, and then I'm following around this circle with Lucky Clover. I felt like green is a very spooky color for Halloween, and it's my favorite color, so you know, I've seen this color combination used in some Halloween cards recently on like the Fawn channel, for example, and the color combination inspired me. So that is kind of why I went for this particular color scheme for the sky. And then I'm following around the Lucky Clover with this blueprint sketch to bring in like actual blues to show that like this is the sky. It's not like some green void where my ghosts are floating in. So I'm just going over with the blueprint sketch, and I'm going back and forth between my ink colors as I, you know, bridge the gaps between them so that I have a nice even blend and transition between all my colors and it's not too rigid, I guess. So I'm going over all of these edges here, and then I'm going to be adding in some chipped sapphire to deepen the blues to make it look like it is actually nighttime and not the daytime. And then here, again, to spookify my card, make it Halloweenish, I guess, I am taking that black soot distress ink and just going over the edges here. I'm using the ink in particular and not the black soot oxide because I find the ink is just a little more pigmented. It's a little darker. The black soot oxide can be kind of ashy when you use it on skies, I find personally, so that's kind of why I go for the ink instead of the oxide personally. And then there's these little corner pieces and bits that is cut out in the die, and I'm going to be using them because I'm going to assemble this like a jigsaw puzzle, so I have to keep them. And I'm coloring them just in this chipped sapphire, and I'm going to go over them again with the black soot again. And these are just like the peripheral corner pieces of the sky, so they don't matter too much, but I did have to color them and use them, so that is what I'm doing here, despite how meticulous and tiny they are. So here I am taking some of that shaded Lilac Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just adding a little bit near the edge or the bottoms of my little ghost dudes, just to add like a spooky glow to them. This doesn't really translate well into my final card, but I thought it just added a little extra dimension. And here I am using a Spiced Marmalade Distress Oxide ink, and I'm using that to color my little pumpkins in. I had laid my pumpkins out on some tape to hold them down while I'm trying to ink blend them, just so they don't wiggle around, and it made ink blending a lot easier, especially with these tiny little elements. Again, I'm using this tape for the little stems, and I'm coloring the little pumpkin stems with the Walnut Stain Distress Oxide to keep the color palette kind of cohesive for this card. And for the frame that is cut out with the spooky scene die, I am just ink blending that with some Distress ink in black soot, again keeping it cohesive. You could cut this out in just black cardstock and use the frame that way, but I already had it cut out. I just figured I might as well ink blend it and use it instead of cutting the die again and only using one piece. So I had off-screen cut out and scored a standard card base that is 5.5 by 4 1/4. And then I'm just stamping out my inside sentiment because I'm going to go ahead and add everything on top, so I might as well decorate the inside now while I can. So I'm using a sentiment here from the Good Fright stamp set from Hello Bluebird. So it says, "Happy haunting to all, and to all a good fright." I thought it was very cute. So I'm just using the latter half of the sentiment on the inside. And then here I am taking some liquid glue, and I'm going to add glue around my frame here because my frame is going to hold all my other puzzle pieces. And I'm using liquid glue in case I mess up, you know, trying to lay this piece down onto my card base. I have some wiggle room before it dries, so I can make sure I get it lined up and straight and even. And once I have it laid down, I'm just going to let it dry with some acrylic blocks on top so it dries nice and flat and it adheres really well. And I'm just going to repeat that process, assembling my little puzzle pieces here with liquid glue to make sure everything wiggles into place. So I'm doing that with my ground here. And then as I'm adding these pieces, I am taking some Copic marker and I'm outlining where I'm going to be adding pieces next, because the gaps in between are going to be green and I don't want that to be seen. That rhymes, but I just don't want people to see the green gaps in between all my pieces here. It can be kind of distracting. So I'm taking some, it's a gray Copic marker, and I'm just coloring in between these gaps where they're going to show, so it's not visible to the eye. One way, I guess, of absolving this issue is assembling your puzzle piece on just like a black card base and then adding that to your card front, I guess, or just using black instead of green. but I wanted green because I like green. So that is how I solved this issue. There is some bleed through with the Copic marker onto the inside of the card, I will say that, but it's not the end of the world. I still like it, so I don't have any regrets, but there are other ways you could solve this issue if you planned ahead instead of, you know, doing what I did and making mistakes. But we all make mistakes. It's fine. So, and here I am adding more marker and then fitting in these tiny little sky pieces. Again, it's just like a little puzzle, and I'm using liquid glue for it all. One thing to note about my background here is I did spray it with the Distress Mica stain in Harvest Moon, just to add some shimmer and stars, I guess, to the background, but I didn't manage to get that on camera, so I thought I would mention that. And what I am doing right here in the video is I am taking some Copic markers, so it's E27 and E25, although I'm sure the actual colors don't really matter if you're doing this kind of card. What I'm doing is I'm adding some like faux wood grain texture to my trees because I just felt like they were flat. They still were lacking and they didn't really look like trees, or they just weren't, they didn't have as much character as I wanted them to have. So I'm just adding some random lines, and I guess this was kind of risky because like it could really make or break the card, and I felt like they looked okay. It turned out alright, so I'm just going over it with like the E27 and then blending it with like the E25 just to make the lines less harsh. And I am taking those same brown Copic markers and I'm just adding a little bit of interest to my gravestones here. So I cut them out of some brown and some gray cardstocks. I did originally cut them out of white, and then I didn't like them once I had ink blended them, so I just decided to change it up a little. So I'm going in and adding some brown shading and then some stippling with some gray Copics on these gray like tombstones to make them look rocky and rough and aged, I guess. Just adding more texture and interest to the card. Here I am taking some yellow glitter paper. I'm not too exactly sure where it's from. And I'm just cutting them to fit behind my pumpkins. You could do this with like a black paper as well, but I felt like the yellow glitter kind of made them look like my little jack-o'-lanterns were like lit and stuff. So I'm just cutting them to fit behind my jack-o'-lanterns, and then I'm going to glue them all together. So I'm adhering the pumpkin faces to the glitter paper, and then I'm going to add the stems on top. So here I am kind of just assembling my scene together. So I'm gluing down my tombstones here with some Lawn Fawn liquid glue, and then I'm just going to let those dry. And then to glue down my little ghost dudes I had cut out previously, I am using this Citron sticker maker. So I'm running my ghosts through and then pressing the glue onto them really well. And then I'm going to just peel and stick them like stickers onto my card. I prefer this method just because it's one solid layer of glue, and then when I'm gluing these vellum, you know, little creatures onto my card, it's not obvious that there's adhesive behind them because of the one solid layer, and it's almost invisible, and it's hard to kind of glue down vellum and make it look invisible. So I really like the Citron sticker maker for this. And here I'm also gluing down my little pumpkins that I had cut out and colored and assembled previously, and I'm just gluing those down again with the Lawn Fawn liquid glue. For my sentiment for this card, I am cutting out the largest banner from the Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment Banner die set, so it's like the widest one, and then I'm just stamping out the other sentiment from the Good Fright stamp set from Hello Bluebird, so it's Happy Haunting to All, and I'm stamping that out with Carrot ink from Lawn Fawn, just a nice solid orange to kind of tie everything together, and then I'm just going to glue that onto the side, cut off the excess, and then I can use that banner on some other project later on. And I also cut out these little stars just from this random die set that we have, so I cut out an odd number of stars here, and I'm just going to glue them around to kind of tie off my little nighttime scene here. I just felt like it needed something. So, and that's the finished card. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.